I think now it's time to move on to our fantastic guest. Jen Thornton is here, and she's going to be talking about how to build a supercharged team, which every entrepreneurial organization needs. Welcome to the show, Jen. It's amazing that you're here with us. And please, for our audience who are maybe thinking about, starting a company, why don't you talk a little bit about how they can build a team, when they should build a team, and maybe also talk about how you built your business.
Well, thank you for having me. And I'm excited to talk to all of your entrepreneurs about creating teams. In the news right now, we're hearing a lot of things around a worker shortage, or, people are leaving traditional jobs and starting their own businesses. I was one of those people myself 4 years ago. So I think it's such a timely conversation to think about how do we think about talent in the workplace, and really recognizing the only way a business gets off the ground is the talent in which surrounds the business. And when I think about, starting your own business, depending on, the structure, what I tell people and what I love to work on with people is taking their business strategy and creating a talent strategy to go along with that. And too often our business strategy is missing that. And so we know how the product's going to get to market. We know who our target audience is. We know what cost of delivery, anything you can imagine around that business is in a business plan. But typically what is missing is who is actually going to do that work. And that's why businesses fail, because we haven't decided how that work's actually going to get done.
I gotta say,
boy, that rings true, doesn't it?
Really yeah. Well, and you do need team members that do the actual work, and it's tough to say who should do what, and sometimes jobs bleed over into each other. And it's also like, what I like to do at Gearhart Law is like define the process and then hand it off. Finding the person to hand it off to has been a struggle.
Yeah,
lately,
the creative
right?
part's the fun part lots of times. Well, that's interesting though. So if you're a solopreneur, your team is really the people, like the accountant that you may outsource to, the marketing person you may outsource to, and whatever other, the designer, the website maker. How do you create a talent strategy with those people in mind?
So that's how I started. It was just me. Now we have a team of about 10 of us, but there was a day where I opened up my laptop and I said, today I'm going to start a business. What the heck do I do next? And so I spent a lot of time thinking about what my wheelhouse was, what I could deliver. And I had to get really honest with what I don't know anything about. And that is okay as an entrepreneur to say, I don't know anything about how to build a website, or I don't know anything about how to set up my business in a way that makes sense legally, or the taxes. And so when you think of all the stuff that needs to be done and you're a solo, get honest with where you do not have knowledge, and really start to work in who you need to bring on to help you with those things. And one of the mistakes I see a lot of solo entrepreneurs do is they may start to bring on one person. And so they think about bringing on one full-time person, and they are like, okay, I need you to do accounting and marketing. And they're asking them to do basically 10 different types of work. And then they think this one person could do it all and do it well. And that doesn't work. We're not that big of generalists in nature as humans.
Right.
And so if you're a solo entrepreneur, you have to break down those items that need to be done that you do not have the knowledge to do properly, and go find experts in each one of those. It's better to find 5 great people who are experts in what they do and work with those 5 people in a small way, versus trying to find one person who you think could do it all, because those people are few and far between.
That's amazing advice. And I have to say, I made that mistake when I was starting out. First of all, I started out doing everything myself.
Yeah.
And
you had a little bit of help.
And Elizabeth, of course, was there backing me up every step of the way. As well as the fact, it was her idea that I start the law firm.
But there were definitely things I didn't want to do or didn't know really how to do. Like, he got these big envelopes that were file wrappers back in the day, that now everything's electronic, but I was like, I've never seen one of those before. What the heck is that thing?
Right.
And
Yeah. And so, but you're right. And part of the thing is I was bootstrapping, right? So to go out and start paying people at the time $100 an hour for 5 hours a week seemed like a lot of money at the time. And I didn't know how I was going to afford all of this, all of the talent. And so if you're strapped for cash, is there a strategy that somebody could employ?
right.
There's a couple of different things when you're having to think about the budget. There is barter, and some people are open to that. I'm an executive coach, and I have an accountant who's a solo entrepreneur. I could have thought about how to barter with her. That could have been an option. And then in today's world, the nice thing is there is the internet. There is YouTube. Verify anything you find on YouTube. You'll find 4 videos that tell you 4 different things on the same topic, and they're all experts. But be very careful about what could crash your business. And those are always anything legal or anything around taxes. And really think about how to make sure you protect some of those things that could be financially a ruin for your organization. Just like our patents, you've come up with an idea, it's really close to someone else's, you don't know that. The legal ramifications of that could take down your business. So really focus in on those core things, and then those other things that you can know enough to be dangerous to figure out, jump in and try to do those.
Well, that's very solid advice. And yeah, of course, I want to amplify that if you're going to create a product or brand, that you at least do a search to make sure that you're clear that somebody else doesn't already have the trademark, or somebody else that hasn't already protected the product. Because after 3 years of work and making progress, you may face legal issues when that person finds out. And it can be pretty destructive. Even if you decide not to even if you decide not to protect it, at least you should know whether somebody else has it, right? So Kenya, you look like you have a question.
Jen, just a few things, because you mentioned like worker shortages early on in the conversation, and I know morale has really been shifted since all of this has been going on. Like, what are some ways that, solopreneurs or companies can identify good talent in this time, considering that there is a worker shortage? And what are some ways that they can help teams build back morale, considering everything everyone's going through in the last almost 2 years?
The first thing organizations have to recognize is, why do people work? And so there's 4 reasons. And so there's financial. So check the box. We know most of us have to have a paycheck, so that's part of it. But the other 3 things are in control of an organization to build. And people work because they want to have a connection, a belonging to a group of people or to other people. And so that is in our control and how we build that. They also want to make sure they're part of something bigger than them. And so of a purpose. And an organization has the ability to create that purpose and to make sure that people feel like they are part of the mission. And then the last thing, the reason why people work, is they want to grow. Even if they want to be in that same position for 20, 15 years, they want to still grow intellectually, and organizations have power over that. And so I think that's the piece that's often missing, is organizations don't step back and say, well, why do people actually work? And am I delivering on that? And if I'm not, what do I need to do to deliver on those things? And then go out and start to think about your employee branding, which is, a great way to create a connection so that candidates feel connected to your organization in the application process, or before they even apply. They may say, gosh, someday I really want to work there because I've been seeing these videos of what it's like to work there, and it's amazing. And so you create that connection. You can, through employer branding, talk about growth, talk about education programs or promotions, or someone who's done something great, or talk about the purpose and how an employee connects in with that purpose. And so that's the first piece, is just really stopping and saying, this is why people work, and am I delivering on that?
So Jen, I have a question following from that. So we hear a lot about company culture, and culture is such an ambiguous word, right? So what actually goes into a company culture? And as the leader of a company or the head of a startup, how do you define that? What does it really mean?
So there's two cultures. There's the one on a piece of paper that everyone talks about and says they're supposed to do, and then the culture of reality, and that is how we act. And so the secret is creating a culture with what's on the paper. What we aspire to is the way we act. And it always starts with leadership, and it starts in a place where leaders really understand how to act in a way in which they have laid out. And so say integrity is part of a culture. Well, then if you want to lead with integrity, you have to think about transparency and honesty. You have to think about how are you going to hear transparency back to you. And I think that is where it gets a hiccup is, executives sometimes or founders think that they are doing that, but they have to be self-aware enough to really think about their actions and how does their actions create the world that people work in.
Wow, that's just really, fascinating. When obviously you've seen this work, right? You've helped companies put all of this together. What kind of results do you see when all of the pieces are working correctly?
So when all the pieces are working correctly, you see a lot of really great things. One of the things that I love to see when I know the pieces are coming together, you start to see honesty and truth telling in the workplace. And that is always my soapbox. If you do not have a culture in which you can be honest with everyone, if you as a leader can't accept the truth when someone tells you the truth, then you really are starting to damage workplace innovation and workplace problem solving, all of those things you're actually wanting to do because you create fear of knowledge, you create fear of telling the truth. And so when I find organizations where an executive will say, man, I was in a meeting the other day and we just hired this brand new coordinator and, she brought up to me that this recent campaign we did just didn't connect with her and told me why. And man, I really needed to hear that. Then I know that we're starting to create a culture where people are telling the truth, people are involved, they are able to have a purpose and are connected to what's going on around them.
So, Jen, I wanted to ask you, how did you get into what you're doing now, into this coaching and working with executives? What was your motivation to do this?
So I am a retailer by heart. And, my big dream as a kid was I wanted to work in the mall. And good news, dreams come true. And I got to work in the mall. And I started leading teams at a really young age. And at a very young age, started recognizing who I had on duty that night when I was closing impacted my KPIs. I loved waking up to my KPIs every single morning. And just from a young age, I started figuring out that I connected the dots. Who was on my team had a direct correlation to my business results. And so, progressed many years. I did operations. I went into HR. I've been domestic. I've been in international HR. And time again, it was proven that companies or concepts, ideas, new adventures, whatever you're doing, it either is successful or it fails based on the people you put on that project. And so after doing that for a lot of years and helping organizations internally as an employee figure out how to create the talent strategy for the new project, I thought, what, I want to have some variety and I want to go off and do it myself. And a lot of things led up to that, but it was those moments in time I'll never forget. I was in a boardroom in Hong Kong. Someone walked in and said something and I thought, nope, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm going to do this on my own. I flew home and started trying to figure it out. So that's how I got here today. And, my passion around helping businesses succeed through their talent.
That's really great. Are you happy that you made the decision to cut ties with the corporate organization and go out on your own?
I am. And the reason why is there is this amazing sense of accomplishment and, my confidence is built. It is hard. Some days I wake up and think, what was I thinking? And then 5 minutes later, I'll get an email from a client and I'm like, oh, I was thinking this was going to be wonderful. And it truly is wonderful. But I am so happy I made this decision. And I've always worked in a corporate environment. So I truly feel like I work with every one of my clients. They don't feel like, a vendor relationship or a consultant relationship. Like I tell them, I'm like, if I join, you're going to have to kind of pretend like I'm a team member, because I will. Like, I will be part of your team. And our clients stay, we've had our very first clients are still our clients today, because we truly do become a team. And there's a purpose of creating this energy through talent and creating better communities. It's the best way to build a better community, is really providing great work environments for people, because how you're treated at work impacts how you treat people when you go home at night. And so here at 304, one of our biggest values is creating better communities. And we do that through the work environment.
Awesome. Kenya?
I mean, you said a whole lot, but I just think what's important to take away is the fact that there are tactics and things that corporations and solopreneurs can use to build effective teams that create, an effective workflow for an organization. But if you had to kind of tie it all together in a bow, what would you say would be the most important thing that a corporation or an entrepreneur can apply immediately that could create some effective change?
Great question. If you are a leader, an entrepreneur, and you want to, create change right this moment, the biggest thing I want you to start to do is to think about how you engage in conversations around information delivery and new ideas. And even if someone comes to you with information that you don't necessarily want to hear, or you don't believe it, what I would love for you to say to that person is, I don't see it, but change my mind. Because then you start to enter into this in conversation with your team. You start to learn things. You start to see it from someone else's perspective. And when you as a leader can be open in a conversation and see other people's perspectives, everything will change. You will drive your business in a way you never knew possible.
That's wonderful. And so when you started your business, so you were fortunate in that you had a lot of training and experience already in your field. So tell us about this point when you stepped out of the corporate world and started to build your business. What were some of the steps that you went through, and how did you know when you kind of made it, right? Because when you're starting out, you're working, you're not sure what's going to happen next. And then it kind of comes a point where, well, I think I got something here that's going to work, right?
So when I think about that moment that I talked about, where I was like, all right, this is my time to jump. I didn't jump that next day. That might not have been the best decision. But what I did is I created a 6-month plan. And I said, what kind of business do I want? What do I need to do for myself so that I can create that successful business? And there was a lot of different pillars. There were some financial things I needed to come to terms with. Though I had a ton of experience, I enrolled in an executive coaching program and ensured that I went to the best school that I could find, so that I was good at what I wanted to do. I, sat down and really thought about, who would be my first clients? What was my network? And I started reaching out to people very early. In fact, my very first contract I got before I left my corporate job, I didn't have a name, I didn't have anything, but I had started reaching out to my contacts and letting them know this is what I'm going to do. I'd love, to keep you inside the story and on my journey, so that when I launch, you'll know what I'm up to. And so I really put together this, plan. I worked out a very long notice at my job and got them settled so that I didn't burn any bridges there, because they could always be potential clients too. And then I, finally, shut one door and opened this door. So when it comes to thinking about if I've made it, I am a true believer as an entrepreneur. I am where I need to be every day. And some days that's a good place and some days that's not. But if you're always waiting for this like moment where you go, ta-da, I'm here, it probably won't come and you will probably stop growing. And so I just look at it as this is where I'm at and I am better today than I was yesterday. And there's a darn good chance I'll be a little tiny bit better even tomorrow. So I don't know if I'll ever arrive. I don't know if that's who I am.
Well, that's an interesting thought. I mean, I will say when Elizabeth and I were starting Gerhardt Law, we were just so in the weeds all the time and trying. And then there was one point, I guess, we had set a financial goal that if we had generated so much revenue, we would continue on. Otherwise, I'd go back and go back into the corporate world. My journey was similar. I worked at Novartis Pharmaceuticals and then left to start this practice. And it was sort of like we took a step back and say, well, we hit all of our targets. And so I guess it makes sense to continue this journey. So
With new targets.
With new targets.
Targets.
But I agree with you. I mean,
Yeah.
every day is a different day,
Yeah.
and we're always looking for that next footing and next, foothold or handhold to get up the mountain, one extra step, and that's what makes it fun.
Right. So Jen, how do people find you? Are you on LinkedIn? I know you have a website. What's your website?
So our website is 304coaching.com. You can find me on LinkedIn at Jen Thornton, ACC, and we can always continue a conversation there. And then I also have a YouTube channel, Jen Thornton 304 Coaching, where I post at workshops, videos, all types of different leadership tools that are out there for you.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for being on the show. I hope you'll stick with us for the rest of the hour so we can get the
Absolutely.
benefit of your experience. But for now, we have to stop for a commercial break. You're listening to Passage to Profit on WOR 710, the Voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.